Hello Zaniacs, welcome back Zaniactv. I'm your host Zane, and today I'm going to give you a 9.0.5 Brewmaster guide. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this. Also, I stream live on Twitch, so come and hang out there with me 4 days a week. The very first and the very most important thing about being a Brewmaster tank is you have to make sure your transmog is on point. Because if you look good, you play good. Look good, play good. Get out of here, gnome. For those of you who watched the 9.0 guide, there are a lot of similarities to this video. However, these here are the things that changed from the 9.0 guide. If you did not see the 9.0 guide, then go ahead and watch it through. You can go ahead and use the chapters on the bottom to skip through what you already know. In this next section, I'm going to go in great detail about Stagger. It can be a bit confusing at first, so bear with me. But by the end, there should be a better understanding of it. Stagger percent is based on your agility, not attack power, not secondary stats, just agility. But agility from all sources. So flasks, enchants, potions, used trinkets, and food all count towards Stagger. For round number purposes, let's say you're getting hit for 100 physical damage attack. Let's say you have 30% Stagger from your agility. You will take 70 damage directly, and 30 damage over 10 seconds. If two attacks at the same time at 100 damage, you receive 140 damage directly and 60 damage over 10 seconds. I've had non-monk tanks tell me, well, what's the point if you're taking the damage regardless? Well, for two reasons. For one, your healer only has to heal an initial burst of 70 damage as opposed to 100, and deal with the rest over 10 seconds. Second, the stagger damage of 30 over 10 seconds can be purified by half, making it 15 damage over 10 seconds. So that doesn't seem like a lot. Well, that's because it's not. Monks have a passive ability, Shuffle, which increases the effectiveness of your stagger by 100%, passive from Keg Smash, Blackout Kick, and Spinning Crane Kick. It's possible to have 100% uptime on Shuffle, so keep Keg Smash and Blackout Kick on cooldown and you'll be fine. Now that we have Shuffle up, Stagger goes from 30% in our hypothetical situation to 60%. Let's take that same 100 physical attack. You now take 40 damage directly and 60 over 10 seconds. If two attacks come at the same time at 100 damage, you will receive 80 damage directly and 120 damage over 10 seconds. What a major difference! I know for sure I would much rather heal someone who took direct 40 damage instead of direct 70 damage. Besides, 60 damage over 10 seconds is only 6 damage a second. Unfortunately though, when it comes to magic damage, it only has a 35% effectiveness. So if you get hit for 100 magic damage, at 60% stagger with Shuffle, you take 79 magic damage and 21 stagger over 10 seconds. It's rougher for magic, but hey, it's better than taking all of it like other tanking classes have to. Keg Smash is a very versatile ability. It deals area damage, has a 20% slow, adds Shuffle, allows Breath of Fire to deal damage over time, and reduces the remaining cooldown of your brews by 3 seconds. Blackout Kick deals single target damage, grants Shuffle, and adds a stack of your mastery, Elusive Brawler. Spinning Crane Kick. Channeled AoE attack that grants you Shuffle. There are a few more uses of this, but we'll go over this with talents and legendaries. Tiger Palm, or as I like to call it, Slap or Slapping, deals single target damage and reduces the cooldown of your brews by 1 second. Breath of Fire is a short range cone attack. If the target is affected by Keg Smash first, it will also leave a damage over time that makes the enemy deal 5% less damage to you. Invoke Nizao the Black Ox. For 25 seconds, Nizao attacks your target. He also stomps, causing AoE damage for 25% of the recently purified stagger damage. During this time, 25% of all damage staggered is instead given to Nizao. Touch of Death. It's an attack that, against non-boss enemies, will kill them instantly if their current health falls below your max health. Got an enemy causing your group problems? Nothing a little touch of death can't fix, am I right? On boss enemies, however, when you get the boss below 15%, it does 35% of your health. However, regardless if it's a boss or not, if its health is below your max health, you could still one-shot it with Touch of Death. Touch of Death also reduces delayed stagger damage by 200% of the damage dealt. Celestial Brew. It absorbs damage based on how much you already purified. Purifying more while it's on also increases its amount. Purifying Brew. Clears half your stagger damage and increases how much Celestial Brew absorbs. Every time you use Purifying Brew, you get 1 stack of Purifying Chi. Clearing moderate or heavy stagger will give you multiple stacks of Purifying Chi, stacking up to 10 times. Expel Harm is a self-heal that you can use every 5 seconds. The amount healed is increased based on how many healing spheres you have out. Your mastery is Elusive Brawler. Every time you are hit by a melee attack, or when you use Blackout Kick, you gain a stacking % of increased dodge chance until your next successful dodge. It also increases your attack power. Let's go back to our hypothetical situation. At 0 mastery, you have an 8% additional chance to dodge. Of course, this scales with mastery, but we're using a hypothetical situation. Now, when this damaging attack hits you, you're going to go from 8% dodge to 16% dodge. Blackout Kick is off cooldown, so I'm going to use it, and now I'm going from 16% dodge to 24% dodge. I now fully dodge this 100 attack. My dodge chance is now reduced back down to 0% dodge. I get super lucky and dodge again. I'm still at a 0% additional dodge from mastery. Now I get super unlucky, I get hit 7 times, and I'm able to use 2 Blackout Kicks. I am now at 80% dodge. I finally dodge the next attack. I am back down to 0% additional dodge from mastery. Now, of course, you're not going to have 0 mastery, but it has to have a base somewhere, and the base is 8. Of course, you will have a base dodge amount, so it'll be your dodge plus 8%. Then every time your mastery procs, it just goes up by that 8%. Now also, your mastery increases your attack power by that base % amount, which increases the potency of some of your spells. Fortifying Brew is your big defensive cooldown. It turns your skin into stone, increasing your current and maximum health by 20%, increasing the effectiveness of your stagger by 10%, and reducing all damage you take by 20%. Alright, and back to our hypothetical situation. While under the effects of Fortifying Brew, that 100 damaging attack now becomes an 80 damaging attack. So now with your stagger at 70%, of that 80, you're going to get directly hit for 24, and you're going to stagger 56 over 10 seconds. Clash. You and the target charge at each other, meeting halfway and rooting all targets within 6 yards. Okay, so pretty much what this is, it's a half pull, half charge. It's really awesome, really good for positioning and interrupting. Leg Sweep is an AoE stun that only has a minute cooldown. It knocks down everybody and stuns them for 3 seconds. Roll, pretty self-explanatory. You roll a short distance. Good for mobility. Transcendence. You leave a Transcendence down, and then you're able to switch to your Transcendence at any point, as long as you're within 40 yards. This is really good for if you're trying to line of sight pull, or if you get knocked off an edge, you can just Transcendence back to where you are. Spear Hand Strike is your interrupt, and Provoke is your taunt. On the first row, I take Eye of the Tiger. I have to use Tiger Palm anyway, and it'll add a passive healing all the time. Plus, I personally really don't want an extra button. On the next row, it is completely personal preference, but I take Chi Torpedo. I would rather be able to roll further than be able to roll more. It is very helpful when trying to pick up threat in Mythic Pluses. On the third row, Now, I know I said I didn't want an extra button on the first row, but this is why. Because Black Ox Brew is very important. Some people say to go light brewing, but with Black Ox Brew, I'm able to reset the cooldown on my Celestial Brew so I can use it when I need it. Plus, it's not actually a 2-minute cooldown because it gets reduced because it's a brew. A lot of higher tanks use light brewing, but when I'm tanking in situations in Mythic Pluses and 15s, 16s, I am seeing myself using Black Ox Brew all the time. Because if I have 30 seconds left on Celestial Brew, I'm going to use it as an emergency Celestial Brew. Whereas light brewing, all it does is reduce the cooldown by 20%, which is 12 seconds. Ring of Peace is the single greatest utility spell in the game. I will argue this constantly. I said it in my last video that was based on 8.3, but I'll say it again. Ring of Peace can be used for everything. It could be a defensive, it could be a interrupt, a stun, it could be a protection spell. Drop it, roll away so they stop hitting you. Ring of Peace is an absolute must-have, and it is undisputed the best talent in this row. Early in the expansion, when I was kind of lower on gear and still trying to get used to the new Brewmaster, I took Healing Elixir. Healing Elixir is a 15 to 25% heal. 25% it correlates with your crit. Every 30 seconds with 2 charges. So I was always sitting there just using it on cooldown, constantly. However, now that I have some more gear, I actually switched to Dampen Harm, which is a 2-minute cooldown that has a 20% to 50% damage reduction. Another good one, but I generally only take this in a raid, is Bob and Weave. What Bob and Weave does is it increases the staggered by 3 seconds. So it goes from 10 seconds to 13 seconds, which makes each tick less potent. I wanted Exploding Keg. I really did. The idea of having enemies miss me for 3 seconds every minute was great. But I was having such a threat issue that I had to go back to Rushing Jane Wind. Spinning Crane Kick just wasn't enough AoE threat. Maybe one day down the line I can switch to it. High Tolerance is currently what I'm running in the last tier of talents. It makes your stagger more potent by 5% and gives you haste based on your current level of stagger. Remember, more haste means you're able to use Keg Smash and Purifying Brew more, in turn being able to use Celestial Brew more. Using Blackout combo is good in theory, but it throws off your opener, and if you have to use Blackout Kick with either Keg Smash or Celestial Brew on cooldown, you'll end up wasting it on the damage buff of Tiger Palm. So let's start off with Conduits. I'm going to go over the Conduits before I go over anything else, because that will actually impact your choice on which Covenant and Soulbind you will select. Whichever Covenant you decide to go, and whichever Soulbind you decide to go, you want to make sure you get 2 Endurance, 1 Potency, and either a 2nd Potency or Finesse. For any Soulbind, you want to get Walk with the Ox, Harm Denial, and Celestial Effervescence. Eventually, depending on the Soulbind you get, you're either going to want to get Strike with Clarity, Bone Marrow Hops, or Dizzying Tumble. Harm Denial and Celestial Effervescence provide the most defense in the Endurance Conduits. Evasive Stride might sound good, but I don't keep high stagger for a very long time, and it's a very low chance that it'll heal you, so I don't really use this one that much. Walk with the Ox is very good, especially in Mythic Pluses. It'll allow you to pop Nizal more on larger trash packs and on bosses. If you can avoid taking a Finesse, I would suggest that, because I would much rather use Dizzying Tumble as a utility spell rather than a defensive spell, which I do anyway, but at least I have that choice. If you can get a 2nd Potency spell as Kyrian or Necrolord, go with the class ability increase. Unless you really want to get the Soulbind that's underneath a 2nd Potency conduit with Venthyr or Night Fae, I would not recommend getting it, because Phalanx Stomp is just extra damage and Fallen Order is just extra damage and healing. but sacrificing a second endurance or even a finesse would not be recommended to replace it with one of these. There are 4 things you need to look at when you're deciding a covenant: class ability, Soulbind, how it works with your Offspec, and cosmetics. Yes, cosmetics. Cosmetics are important because you're going to be spending a lot of time in that zone. If you don't like a certain covenant, you're not going to want to be in that zone for a long time, and you're not going to really have as much fun. Now, if cosmetics don't matter to you, it doesn't matter because I'm not going to be going over it much anyway, because it's really all just opinion based. Alright, let's get started with the Venthyr. My opinion on cosmetics is irrelevant, but regardless, love it, get to check. Door of Shadows has a 1-minute cooldown and a 1.5 second cast time. Its base use is just a basic teleport. Target the ground and teleport to that spot. With Soulbinds, it can be either a disorient, movement speed increase, freedom from roots, or a 15% max health shield. Depending on the Soulbind you pick, it can either be useful, situational, or very niche. Fallen Order is a 3-minute cooldown with a 24-second duration. Every 3 seconds, it summons the spirit of a monk. It favors what class you are, so since you are tanking, it favors the Fallen Ox. There are 2 things I don't like about this ability. For one, I don't like its 3-minute cooldown compared to the other 3 options, which are way shorter. Second is using this ability, even though it's favoring the Ox, it's still a random chance at which one comes out, and the only thing it's going to be doing is spreading Breath of Fire and maybe sometimes healing with a little bit of damage. It's a fun and cool concept, but with this long cooldown and short duration, it's just not practical. One class ability is okay, but the other one is out. Alright, so the first Soulbind and the first ability is Thrill Seeker, which pretty much gives you Haste. And you'll see later that Haste is your worst stat, so already starting off with a bad start here. The next option is you have either the Disorient from Door of Shadows, which was mentioned earlier, or the movement speed from Door of Shadows. But we're going to go ahead and pick the Potency Conduit and throw in that Walk with the Ox, and then select Door of Shadows. So now we're forced to go Finesse, which would be Dizzying Tumble, and then here you loot 20% more infused rubies, so that's open world stuff, some cosmetic stuff. You have to get that anyway. Now here, we're going to need to get Harm Denial. So now we have to choose what's more important, the second Endurance Conduit or one of these bottom ones. So let's start with the far left. Increase the duration of incoming interrupt, snare, and root effects are reduced by 25%. Alright, that's not more important than Celestial Effervescence. Let's check this side. The first enemy you deal damage to in combat is marked as your adversary. You deal 3% more damage to them, and they deal 1.5 less damage to you. Alright, so that's one target, one adversary deals 1.5% less damage. But then you would have to get a finesse, second finesse. I'm going to go ahead and do the benefits of Well-Fed, Flask, and Weapon enchant effects increased by 20%. So we're going to go ahead and choose Celestial Effervescence and select that. Here as an option for tanks, I would say no. On the second Soulbind, the first ability gives you 525 mastery. That's a lot of mastery. That's equal to 15% mastery. And it lasts for 12 seconds. It's about once per minute. But the problem here is you have to stand in the shade. Don't really like that you can't move around, but the fact that you're able to get that much mastery is a benefit. So let's go ahead and check underneath here. Which of these 2 are we going to do? Are we going to do Door of Shadows frees you from roots and snares, or Door of Shadows has 2 charges? I don't really think the 2 charges is necessary, because then it would just make it a movement ability. So we're going to go ahead and pick the Endurance, and then choose Door of Shadows frees you from roots and snares. Now we're going to have our first Potency Conduit, which is going to be Walk with the Ox. These 2 is completely user's choice. One of them is the Covenant's extra side ability, which is the Ember Court. It allows you to do a little bit better with that. Or, when you kill something outside of a Mythic Plus, you're able to get herbs and drinks. I like satchels, I like herbs, so I'm going to go ahead and select this one. Now we have a second Endurance, which will be chosen by Celestial Effervescence. Now, before we look at these three, let's take a look at what they are. Token of Appreciation is a shield for an ally. It's not for you. It's for an ally who aids you with healing or beneficial magic effects. So it would be your healer. It'd be somebody possibly misdirecting you. It would be something that's not on you. So this doesn't affect you. Well, I wouldn't suggest this one. All right. Second one. The effects of combat potions last 100% to 200% longer. That sounds pretty good. If you're using like a defensive potion or an agility potion, it'll just last longer. The third option is Fallen Order, which is your Fallen Monks. Fallen Order starts tea time, granting 6% versatility to you and 3% versatility to up to 4 nearby allies for 30 seconds. So for 30 seconds, once every 3 minutes, you get 6% versatility. Yes, please. So we're going to go ahead and get Dizzying Tumble and the versatility. This Soulbind tree is good for tanking, but just be careful up here when you have to stand in the shade. Alright, and the third Soulbind, General Draven. Damage taken below 40% health is reduced by 10%. That's incredible. That right there is like having 10% damage reduction versatility. While you're under 40% health, sign me up. However, upon death, which you shouldn't be doing, you leave a stone husk behind, which shatters after 3 seconds, inflicting 100% of your maximum health in physical damage split among nearby enemies, and healing for 100% of your maximum health split among allies within 20 yards. Okay, so if by some chance you die, since you have a lot of health as a tank, you're going to be inflicting damage and healing to everybody if you die. At least the first part is really good because, like I said, not a fan of dying, but at least when you're below 40% health, you're going to get that 10% damage reduction. Now we have two options here. We have an Endurance or a Finesse. Let's continue down and look. Here, when a nearby ally grants temporary increased movement speed, you also gain the benefit up to 30% for 8 seconds. So if somebody else has a movement speed increase, you get it too. Over here, Door of Shadows grants you a shield that absorbs damage equal to 15% of your maximum health. That sounds incredible. Now Door of Shadows actually has an ability. So with that, we're going to go ahead and take Dizzying Tumble over here, grab Door of Shadows, Potency Conduit, go ahead and do Walk with the Ox. Now there's two choices here. One of them is your equipment takes 50% less durability damage from death. And the other one is leaving a resting area will increase your mounted speed. That's entirely up to you. I would go ahead and do this personally, but up to you. Alright, so you have your first shield, which is Harm Denial. Now, we have three options here. Option 1, standing still for at least 4 seconds grants you 10% increased stamina and 4% increased healing done. This effect persists for 6 seconds after you start moving. Okay, so if you want to stand still for a little bit to get the buff and then move, that's fine. You're not, like, stuck. But knowing that to get a full effect of this, you'll have to stand still for 4 seconds. You could do that when tanking, for the most part. Just stand still for 4 seconds and move. That sounds pretty good. Let's check the next one. Successfully interrupting an enemy or disrupting an ally increases your critical strike chance by 10%. So you'll see later what critical strike actually does. It actually correlates with your healing. So this could be a good option. Over here, we have when you are above 80% health, you gain 1% agility pretty much every 3 seconds, stacking up to 4 times. So you could get 4% agility from this. If you fall below 50% health, this effect is lost. Alright, so you have a few options here. I would not go for this. This is not really a one that you want to do as a tank because the amount of times you are above 80% health will not make this one viable. So it would be between these three here. What's more important, the endurance and successfully interrupting for crit, or standing still for at least 4 seconds grants you 10% stamina. Well, you could do either one of these. You have two options here. If you go ahead and do the second Potency Conduit, you would go ahead and do Imbued Reflections, which Fallen Order monks deal extra damage and healing, and standing still. Or the other option would be you get your Celestial Effervescence, and the interrupt. So overall, this Soulbind is actually pretty good for tanking, and you even have 2 different options for different scenarios. So Soulbinds, I'm going to say a yes. Now, based on everything we just heard, the class ability is not all that great for Mistweaver. The Soulbinds are okay for Mistweaver. Therefore, Offspec gets a nice X. Alright, let's take a look at Night Fae. My personal opinion on cosmetics is irrelevant. However, Night Fae gets a check from me. Soul Shape is an incredible mobility spell. You can teleport forward with a 50% increased movement speed. Great for faster pulls in Mythic Plus or trying to catch up somewhere. With Soulbinds, it could be either a health regenerator, a charge and stun, or party movement speed buff. It can be very versatile in many situations. Feline Stomp deals damage and has a 30-second recharge. It has a 6% chance of resetting, as well as giving your Stagger a 5% more effectiveness against targets that are hit. Now, the Stagger is great. This is also great for threats. Plus, with the reset chance, you're able to do it multiple times. I am, in fact, in favor of the class ability. Alright, Soulbinds. Let's start off with Nia. Grove Invigoration. Healing or dealing damage has a chance to grant you a stack of Redirected Anima. Redirected Anima increases your maximum health by 1% and your mastery by 25 for 30 seconds. Stacks overlap. Feline Stomp grants you 4 stacks of Redirected Anima. Okay, so Feline Stomp has a 30-second cooldown with a chance to reset. So you will constantly have 4 to 10 stacks up at all times, which is 2.85% to 7.14% mastery up at all times. That's incredible. Having a constant amount of increased mastery every time you use Feline Stomp with chances to refresh it, this is a great Soulbind right here. So we have 2 choices. We can either go towards the, while in Soul Shape you regenerate 5% of your maximum health, or Soul Shape's cooldown's reduced, but let's look at the future. So it looks like we should go to the Potency Conduit and get Walk with the Ox, grab Regenerate. We have to get Dizzying Tumble here. Alright, so this is a cosmetic here. We either have the Satchel or movement speed increased after defeating an enemy. Technically, that's better in Mythic Pluses, but I like my Satchel, but that's better for open world. So if we're doing Mythic Pluses, we're going to go ahead and grab the movement speed. Then we have to grab the shield here. We're going to get Harm Denial. So now we have 3 choices here. The Nia's Tools Burrs, which damaging attacks and spells have a chance to throw a burrs down and slow your target. Here, when you interrupt, you deal damage. And then here, your healing spells and abilities have a chance to apply Nia's Invigorating Herbs, increases the target's haste by 5%. Well, you do a lot of health self-healing, but you don't really want that extra haste, and you definitely don't want the second finesse. Now, if you do want to get the poison tool, you will have to go back and switch to here to get the cooldown reduce of Soul Shape. However, I kind of like having the regenerate, so I'm going to go ahead and grab the second shield, get Celestial Effervescence, and Nia's Tools Burrs, because that'll help with kiting because it's a slow. Overall, Nia is a very good Soulbind. Alright, so Dreamweaver. Pod Tender as a tank is incredibly dangerous. You are trapped for 10 seconds with no hope of release, no hope of running back, no hope of battle res. You are stuck in that seed. Pod Tender is dangerous, but if you really want it, I will still continue going down this tree, but I highly do not recommend Pod Tender. So we do want to avoid finesse as best as possible. So we're going to go ahead and grab Harm Denial. And then we're going to get Walk with the Ox. So we have 3 choices here. When your roots, stuns, and incapacitating class effects expire or dispelled, target's movement speed is reduced by 90%, decaying rapidly over 2 seconds. Okay, so when you use Leg Sweep, things are slowed by 90%, which will definitely help with kiting, and this also works with paralysis. Social Butterfly. When at least 2 allies are within 8 yards, your versatility is increased by 3% for 5 seconds. When this expires, 2 allies gain 33% of this effect for 5 seconds before passing it back to you, which is 1%. So pretty much it's 3% versatility on, 1% versatility for your friends, and then 3% for you again every 5 seconds. Well, let's think about that. 2 allies are within 8 yards, which means you have to have melee in order for this to be effective. So, not really that great. Empowered Crystallis. 10% of your overhealing received or done remains as a shield on the target for up to 10% of the caster's health, lasting for 5 seconds. Okay, so overhealing received, that includes anything that you do to yourself. If you want to use Expel Harm at full health, 10% of that will be turned into a shield, up to 10% of your health. So this is where you decide, which one of these do you want to do? Well, overhealing shield sounds really good, but at the same time, being able to kite is really good. So which one of these are you going to do? So let's look in the future a little bit. So the future, you see that we're going to get a shield, and we'll be able to get either a finesse or a potency. If you choose this, you do get a potency, and the choices here are really damage. So like I said, Way of the Fae, which will just be increased damage to it, or the other potency conduit you can get is Scalding Brew, which Cake Smash deals additional damage to affected by Breath of Fire. So if you go this route, you have a kite and extra damage. If you go this route, you're going to get Dizzying Tumble for extra leg sweep. I would choose this. Get that extra overhealing. The kiting is good, but you do have a lot of ability to kite. So we're going to go this way. Then we're going to grab Celestial Effervescence. Then here you have 2 choices. When falling further than 20 yards, Fairy Dust slows your fall for the next 30 seconds. This includes happening in Theater of Pain. Wasn't really that great when you're trying to fall down and try to do a dungeon really fast for Theater of Pain. So the other one is after spending 60 seconds in a rested area, you gain 20% increased movement speed. I would say this over here. And then here, Feline Stomp puts flowers at your feet for 5 seconds, increasing your haste by 12% when you stand in them. We don't really want haste. So I would absolutely not recommend Dreamweaver because there's just not a good tree for Brewmasters. Kyrian. Your damaging to targets above 75% health and healing to targets below 35% health is increased by 10%. Alright, so if you fall below 35% health and you self-heal, it's increased by 10%. Plus, when you damage targets above 75%, which is all trash, you get increased damage, so that's more threat. When you do spells and abilities this way, you gain 15% increased movement speed for 5 seconds. So this is good for initial threat. And this is also good if your health falls very low. Alright, so we have 2 choices here, a potency or a defensive. Let's see, what do we have here? Soul Shape increases the movement speed of allies, or while out of combat, your Soul Shape's teleport becomes a charge. Okay, so that sounds really good, being able to charge and stun the targets as you enter into combat. Or you help everybody move faster. But we have to look into the future. We're going to look into the future and see down here which way do you want to go, because that'll actually affect it, because remember, you do want to have multiple of the shields. So let's look into the future before we continue down this. We have, while in front of your target, your spells and abilities decrease the damage they inflict on you by 3%. Well, that actually sounds incredibly good. Then we have this over here. Damaging an enemy before they damage you increases your chance to critically strike by 25% for 5 seconds. Then this third one is after standing still for 5 seconds, you take 15% less physical damage until you move. Okay, so all 3 of these have their ups and downs. Hold the line would be really good if it's a lot of physical damage. But dungeons that have a lot of casting, like Spires of Ascension or The Other Side, the physical damage is going to be irrelevant. When you look at First Strike, damaging an enemy before they damage you, you're a tank. You should be doing that all the time. Increases your chance to critically strike by 25% for 5 seconds. Alright, so at the beginning of the fight, you'll have increased critical strike, which in length increases your healing. The third one is while you're in front of your targets, your spells and abilities decrease the damage they inflict on you by 3%. Well, you're always going to be in front of your targets. So this looks like the best here. So since we looked at the future, we're going to see that we have a potency and a shield and a finesse. So I would go with Wild Hunt Charge. So we're going to do Harm Denial, Wild Hunt Charge, Dizzying Tumble. Your weapon takes no durability damage. Well, that'll save you some money. Your mounted movement speed is increased by 5%. Allies behind you within 40 yards grant this benefit. Alright, I accept that. It'd be very good for Mythic Pluses. Then we're going to get Celestial Effervescence. Now we have our Walk with the Ox here, and Face Your Foes. I would say Kyrian is above average, but not the best of the three. As for Soulbinds, I'm going to give it a check. That first Soulbind is really incredible for tanking. Feline Stomp as a healer as a whole is not all that great. However, that mastery bonus with the Soulbind does make it worth it. However, with the way the game is, you are unable to use 2 Soulbinds per spec with the proper conduits. Therefore, I am unable to accept Offspec as a viable option. Alright, as for the Necrolords, I do not like Maldraxxus, I do not like Plague, I do not like Bone, I just don't like this place. So, cosmetics, out. Fleshcraft got a huge buff in 9.0.5. For 3 seconds while you channel, you will have a 20% damage reduction. Time it right and you can reduce a big incoming attack by 20%. Plus, at the end of the 3 seconds, you get a 40% health shield. So it's like a cross between a lower end Dampen Harm and a partially empowered Celestial Brew in one spell. Its 2-minute cooldown is an illusion because walking past a corpse reduces cooldown by 1 second. And in Mythic Pluses, there are plenty of corpses. The one thing I don't really care for is I cannot move while casting Fleshcraft, making me location locked. But everything else makes it a very good spell. With Soulbinds, Fleshcraft can give you a buff based on nearby enemy type, immune to crowd control, and a 6% to 12% health regeneration, max health increased, castable while moving, or additional cooldown reduction. Alright, so this is how Bone Dust Brew works. You douse your enemies with a skill shot, soaking them in brew. For the next 10 seconds, your Tiger Palm and Keg Smash reduce the cooldown of your brews by an additional 1 second. I do want to point out that it is a brew, so this 1 minute cooldown is actually not 1 minute, it's less. Over the duration of the 10 seconds, due to global cooldowns, the most amount of downtime with your brews is going to be an additional 6 seconds. So by using this ability, overall, you're going to be reducing the cooldown of your brews by 6 seconds per minute. Me, personally, I don't really like the way Bone Dust Brew works. It's just not a skill that I really like. I would have to use this on cooldown and get as much of the 10 seconds as I can in order for this to be the most effective. I feel like it's a lot of work for only 6 seconds of reduced brew time. For me and my playstyle, Bone Dust Brew is out. Fleshcraft is good though, I'm going to keep that. Now like I said, this is just my playstyle. If this is good for your playstyle, I'm still going to go over the Soulbinds right now. Alright, I'm not even going to bother trying to pronounce this guy's name, so we're going to call him Plague. Volatile Solvent. Fleshcraft's passive effect consumes a corpse essence completely, granting a benefit based on the creature's type. So what that means is if you use Fleshcraft near a mechanical, you're going to get a certain buff. If you use it against a humanoid, you're going to get another buff. And a beast, you're getting a different buff. So that's what that means. You can have a whole bunch of different buffs at once. Alright, so you have 3 choices here. Let's check the lower ones first. When reduced below 50% health, Ooze courses over you, granting you a shield for 50% of your maximum health for 10 seconds. Once every 30 seconds. Okay, that sounds pretty good, especially since tanking's health go up and down for a 15% shield. When standing still, you slowly build stacks of Bloop's Wanderlust. At 5 stacks, your movement speed is increased. And then your first attack or spell cast on an enemy increases your damage done to them by 10% for 10 seconds. But then we'd have to get a finesse. So let's go ahead and get Walk with the Ox and the shield. Then we're going to get this, Harm Denial. Now we have 2 choices. Allows the openings of locks, or defeating enemies has a chance to deploy your Plague Blurred Cleansing Slime, which increases the remaining durability of your armor. I like saving money. There aren't a lot of locks, so we're going to go ahead and use that. Second Potency Conduit, we're going to get Bone Marrow Hops. We're going to go ahead and grab the second shield, Celestial Effervescence, and then Ultimate Form. While channeling Fleshcraft, you are immune to crowd control, so you can't get stunned, you can't get feared, you can't get knocked back, and you regenerate 2% health every 1 second. If you finish the full channel, you gain 3 seconds of crowd control immunity, during which you regenerate 2% health every 1 second. So that is 6% if you fully finish, and then that's another 6% from the actual regenning, so it's 12% health. So overall, I would say that Plague is very good. And many. Bone Dust Brew increases your agility by 5% and up to 4 nearby allies' primary stat by 2% for 10 seconds. You gain 2% additional agility for each ally affected. So you could have, in theory, up to 10% additional agility with this. Alright, so now we have two choices here. Fleshcraft increases your maximum health by 5%, or you may channel Fleshcraft while moving. I'm going to go ahead and get the maximum health by 5%. Go ahead and get Walk with the Ox. Now we have to get a Finesse. So we have two choices here. After taking fall damage, the health loss becomes a shield. It's not a lot of fall damage. So let's have a second Hearthstone. Alright, so now we have the first shield for harm denial. Now we have three choices here. Movement speed increased by 3% for every nearby enemy. Gain 3% haste for 10 seconds. Or when reduced below 20% health, you fear nearby enemies. Let's not go with the fear. So really, you're going to have to choose which one do you want. Do you want a second defensive conduit, or do you want a second potency conduit? Because haste, as said before, is not all that great of a stat for tanking. Or do you want movement speed? So this is going to be entirely your choice. Do you want to not have Celestial Effervescence, or do you want to have Bone Marrow Hops? So once you decide that, you can pick which one of these you want. Alright, and then the last one is Bonesmith. Your agility and armor are increased by 1% for each enhancement on your armor, up to 3%. So you're going to be enchanted, of course. So you're going to have 3% armor and 3% agility. Upon death, your armor anchors your soul, allowing you to fight an additional 10 seconds. During this time, your damage and healing done is reduced by 50%, and you cannot receive healing. Well, at least you'll be up for an additional 10 seconds, but then you'll be able to run back or get your battle res, but you can't get healed. So you have to take it, but we're going to go ahead and grab it. Just don't die. That'll solve that problem. Alright, so we have two options here. Do you want Fleshcraft's passive effect reduces the cooldown by an additional 1 second when it consumes a corpse? So that's just faster Fleshcraft, or inflict shadow damage to your attacker over 5 seconds when hit at melee range. This is going to be another one of those we're going to have to look into the future. Because if you choose this, you're not going to want to get 3 shields. If you choose this, which one are you going to get? So let's go ahead and skip down to the future. Damaging or healing a target below 35% grants you 35% increased movement speed for 5 seconds after you start moving. Then we have, after you're landing 10 critical strikes, you gain 18% increased chance to critical strike for 10 seconds. Or, defeating an enemy restores 3% of your maximum health every 6 seconds. Well, that one sounds really good. So do you want to get 3% maximum health every 6 seconds? Do you want to get 10 critical strikes, gains you 18% increased critical strike? So we're going to have a little dilemma here. Are we going to have 2 finesses, or are we going to have 2 shields? So with that, let's just go back, grab Walk with the Ox, grab the passive here, and then we're going to get Dizzying Tumble. So we have 2 choices here. Mounted movement speed is increased by 5%. If attacked while mounted, mounted movement speed is increased. Or are we going to get the Satchel? Really, Doesn't matter. So you can't really get a satchel in Mythic Pluses. And if you're hit while mounted, you shouldn't be. So just user's choice here. Now we're going to get Harm Denial. So here's the thing. If you really want to get defeating an enemy restores 3% of your maximum health every 6 seconds for 6 seconds, stacking up to 5 times, and stacks refresh the duration, well, that sounds great, but then you're going to be forced to get another finesse. So what do we want? Do we want Lingering Numbness? When paralysis ends, your target movement speed is reduced by 40%. That targets one person. Do you want Transcendence Transfer? Increases your movement speed. You'll be transcending for kiting. And then the other one is Tumbling Technique. Blackout Kick has a chance to grant you a charge of rollback. That's helpful. So really, user's choice. Are you going to Transcendence a lot, or are you going to do Blackout Kick? If I were doing this, I personally would get the Blackout Kick, but Swift Transference is not wrong. And we're going to go ahead and grab this. If you really want to go and get the 2 shields, go ahead and grab the Celestial Effervescence and the Critical Strike. But overall, I would say that Bonesmith Hammer would be okay for tanking. But I would go with Plague Dervisher Barilith. I don't even know if I pronounced that right. Necrolord Soulbinds? Yes. Alright, so as for Offspec, we definitely say yes to the Soulbinds because all 3 of them are also good for healing. However, short answer, people don't generally stack up for Mythic Pluses. The numbers may be the highest, but in a practical use, people just don't stack. So Bone Dust Brew will not be at its full potential, therefore Offspec, out. For me, cosmetics, yes. First, let's talk about the Steward, also known as a Swolkin or Yoo-Hoos. They have multiple functions. If upgraded in the Path of Ascension, they can become a mailbox, talent changer, a vendor, bank access, teleporter, and a multi-step 1-item repair. However, if you don't upgrade it, they provide a Vial of Serenity, which is a 20% max health heal and can cleanse you of your diseases, poisons, curses, and bleed effects. Of course, as a monk, you can cleanse your own diseases and poisons, but if you have a curse or a bleed, you can get rid of it. This is incredibly good for necrotic weeks and mythic pluses. It has a 3-minute cooldown that starts after being out of combat for 5 seconds. With Soulbinds, the vial can reduce cooldown, increase healing over time, add immunity to diseases, poisons, curses, and bleed effects, a knockback, or automatically trigger when your health falls below 35%. This is an incredible item, especially as a tank. Weapons of Order. For 30 seconds, your mastery is increased by 10%. That is a hard 10%. It is not based on your points of mastery from gear, it is just a hard 10% increase. The second half of this ability resets the cooldown of your Keg Smash, plus increases the damage enemies take from you by 8%, stacking up to 4 times. So that means you can get your brews back faster, as well as get additional threat from enemies with the extra damage. Weapons of Order also has a long duration compared to its short cooldown. So every 2 minutes for 30 seconds, you can increase your dodge chance by 10% and increase the potency of your defensive spells. Weapons of Order? Check. Soulbinds. Let's start off with Pelagos. Combat Meditation. When you cast Weapons of Order, increases your mastery by 350 for 20 seconds and occasionally expels sorrowful memories. Those are little white balls on the ground. Walking through the sorrowful memories extends this effect by 6 seconds. Okay, so 350 mastery is 10%, and Weapons of Order is 10%, so really you're getting 20% mastery for a very long time, because every time you get an orb, it increases it by 6 seconds, so it could actually last longer than Weapons of Order does. So we're going to go ahead and select that. So we have 3 here. There's going to be an X, a shield, or a finesse. So let's just look at the next rows. Defeating an enemy lowers its cooldown of your Vial of Serenity by 1 second. That sounds great. Then we have defeating an enemy grants you 10% movement speed. This is good for mobility. And then the third one is Vial of Serenity heals you for 35% additional health, but all of its healing is done over 10 seconds. Not a huge fan of that, especially since we have to take a finesse. I'm going to go ahead and grab Walk with the Ox here, and defeating an enemy lowers the cooldown of Vial of Serenity. Then we're going to go ahead and grab our Harm Denial. So you have two choices here. Defeating an enemy reduces the cooldown of your steward's non-file services by 30 seconds. So we listed what all their non-file services are, and going through Mythic Pluses, it will really clear everything. Or you can get your Satchel. I'm a fan of Satchels because I'm going to run this open world anyway, so I'm just going to pick the Satchel, but in reality, this is better for Mythic Pluses. I just forget to switch them, so I'm just going to leave that on. Then you have your second Potency Conduit, which you will go ahead and get Strike with Clarity. Then we're going to grab the second Shield for Celestial Effervescence, and then the last one is Let Go of the Past, using the spell or ability that reduces your magic damage taken by 1% for 6 seconds. Using another spell or ability increases the amount by 1% when it's not a repeat of the previous spell, stacking to 3%. So since you're always doing different abilities constantly over and over again, the great news is it doesn't cancel it. If I use 2 Tiger Palm, it doesn't reset it. But if I do Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, Tiger Palm, then it's fine. Or if I do Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, Keg Smash, Tiger Palm, I'll still have it. So Let Go of the Past is incredible for magic damage reduction. Pelagos is definitely a great Soulbind. Alright, so for Clea, your critical strikes grant you stacks of Valiant Strikes up to 20. If a nearby party member drops below 50% health, you consume these stacks to heal them for 1% of the maximum health per stack. After healing this way, you may not benefit from Valiant Strikes for 1 minute. So something to note about this. Once this activates, for 1 minute, you can't even get stacks. So if somebody falls below 50% health when less than 20 stacks, they're not even getting the full amount of heal. This is not as good as it sounds. But since you have to take it, we're going to go ahead and select it. So we have two routes here. Do we want to get while above 90% health, you increase your party members' maximum health by 5%, or Vial of Serenity renders you immune to curses, disease, poisons, and bleeds for 8 seconds. Well, think about the future. Down here, you'll see that we can get one of these 3, but we really do want to aim for getting the correct conduits, but we are forced to get a lightning bolt. So let's decide what we're going to get in the future so we can decide which way we're going to go. Bearer's Pursuit, your damaging spells and abilities have a chance to decrease your target's movement speed by 45% for 20 seconds. Sounds pretty good for kiting. Chance to critically strike is increased by 1% for each nearby enemy or ally up to 5%. So that does accompany the first ability, but crit is not really the highest priority right now. So let's just check and see what the next one is. When receiving healing while above 70% health or healing an ally that is above 70% health, 4% of the healing is done repeated to the target over 5 seconds. But then that's going to force you to get a second finesse. So really you have two options. Do you want to get more shields or do you want to get more potency? Because one of them is going to get sacrificed. Either way, we're really not going to want to do this route, but I'll go over it anyway. If you do the Pointed Courage, you're going to want to get Mentorship. If you're going to get Bearer's Pursuit, you're going to want to get Ascendant File. But in reality, this route's really not great. I'll still go over it anyway. If I were to do this route, I'm going to go ahead and show two different options. We would do Walk with the Ox, grab while above 90% health, you increase your party members' maximum health by 5%. We're not really above 90% health that much as a tank. At the beginning we are, but once we start getting hit, we're not going to be at 90% health. And we're going to grab Dizzying Tumble. At 5 seconds out of combat, you gain a shield for 10% of your maximum health. Or, while above 90% health, your mounted movement speed is increased by 10%. We're going to go with the shield. We're tanking. Then we're going to grab Harm Denial, Celestial Effervescence, and then extra crit. That's what I would do. Not a huge fan of this, though. And then the last one is Brawn. Brawn's Call to Action. After using 90 damage or healing spells and abilities, your next spell or ability summons Brawn, who knocks enemies back on arrival, then attacks and heals your target for 30 seconds. So a few things to note about this. Brawn is incredible, right? This is what Brawn looks like. But after using 90 damaging or healing spells, well, that seems like a lot. It can be, but this is only a problem at the initial start of the dungeon. Because as soon as you hit 90 and Brawn is out for those 30 seconds, during those 30 seconds, you're getting stacks. Unlike with Clea, you're actually able to get stacks while Brawn is out. Plus, he heals and damages and knockbacks. So the thing with the knockback is, since there's a lot of casting, it can count as an interrupt. Brawn is actually really good and he's a lot of fun. So we're going to go ahead and click that there, especially since it's our only option. So we have two choices here. When reduced below 35% health, your Vial of Serenity automatically heals you and consumes a charge. The other one is your Vial of Serenity also knocks nearby enemies away from you. Well, when you see the future, you're going to see that actually the 35% health automatic use is great. So we're going to go ahead and click the Walk with the Ox and Forge Light Filter. We are forced to get Finesse, Dizzying Tumble. So we have two choices here. Casting or receiving healing has a chance to improve the remaining durability of your armor. The other choice is fall damage is decreased by 20%, and after taking fall damage, damage you take is reduced by 20%. You don't take a lot of fall damage in dungeons, so let's go ahead and grab the armor durability. We're going to go ahead and grab the shield. Armed Denial, so now we have three choices here. After 5 seconds standing still, incoming stun and incapacitate durations are reduced by 30%. Lasts for 5 seconds once you start moving. We do a lot of kiting. Not sure if that's really all that great. Damaging a new enemy grants you 3% haste for 10 stacks in a second, up to 5 stacks. So that's 15% haste if you have 5 enemies. And then while reduced below 35% health, your stun nearby enemies for 3 seconds may only occur once every 45 seconds. So all of these are okay. So what do you want to get? Do you want to get a second shield, or do you want to get a second potency? Unless you want to go this way so you can get 2 shields and then a potency. But I would go ahead and grab Celestial Effervescence and the 3% haste. So the only reason why I'm saying this is good is because Brawn is a lot of fun, and it's worth having to get the haste. Soulbinds, check. Alright, so Offspec. For Mistweaver, I actually like the Kyrian ability because it's 30 seconds of 41% increased mastery. Plus, there is multiple Soulbinds I'll be able to use. Therefore, Offspec gets a check. Alright, so how do you pick what covenant is best for you? So let's start looking at everything flat out, all the best ofs. Let's start narrowing down which Soulbinds you want. In Kyrian, there are two choices. Pelagos is better than Brawn. Brawn is a lot of fun, but Pelagos gives you mastery and damage reduction when it comes to magic, plus faster vials instead of instant vials. So out of these two, we're going to go with Pelagos. Over in Venthyr, as nice as the extra mastery is and the extra versatility, the extra mastery, you're going to you have to stand under the umbrella, and the versatility only lasts during Fallen Order. So the damage reduction is much better. Okay, so if you overlook everything with Venthyr, you notice that the class abilities aren't on there, and overall, Venthyr is just not one of the better choices compared to the other three. If you look at Night Fae, I've been tempted to go Night Fae. I've been tempted to go Night Fae since the beginning, but in reality, having a passive amount of lower percentage of mastery the entire time with an extra stagger is not nearly as good as having bursts of it. And then Necrolord is just... The major thing is Fleshcraft. Having Fleshcraft up every 2 minutes, being able to use that as a defensive cooldown, I feel is not nearly as powerful as having a massive amount of mastery, plus being able to get rid of bleeds and poisons and curses, plus having all of that extra mastery and magic damage reduction. So, in the end, I feel Kyrian is the best for me. The legendary you want to get is Stormstout's Last Keg. Keg Smash deals more damage, but this is what you want it for. The one additional charge. Having 2 Keg Smashes will allow you to have more brews off cooldown quicker and add some extra threat. Once you're pretty sustained on tanking and you want to push keys fast, I would say get Touch of Death, has a reduced cooldown by 120 seconds. Brewmasters are able to dual wield or use a two-hander. However, it is a lot better to dual wield because you can use 2 weapon enchants and 2 oils. Alright, so my stat priority is item level greater than versatility greater than or equal to mastery, which is way greater than crit, which is greater than haste. Now what Wowhead says, it's item level, then versatility, then crit is greater than mastery and haste. First, I'll go over and explain why I chose the order that I did, and then I'll go over why Wowhead went over their choices. In this expansion, they made primary stats way more than secondary stats did. Plus, agility gives stagger and the more potent attack power. Versatility is your primary secondary stat. I know that's confusing. So it is the most important secondary stat. I do my best to have every slot of gear except for one piece having versatility. I'll explain which piece in a minute, but all pieces except for the one has versatility in it. Versatility increases the raw potency of your Celestial Brew, it increases your damage and healing done, and big one is reduces your damage taken. So when you hear people talk about versatility, you're going to hear them talking about the first number. Oh yeah, I have 20% versatility. Well, as a Brewmaster, you really want to focus on the second number, the 10%. The first number is the bigger number, and the other 2 roles want to focus on the bigger one. But that is increasing your damage and healing. We're tanks, so we want to focus on damage reduction. Of course, there's nothing wrong with having a 20% damage increase for threat, plus healing, it will increase your expel harm heal, but that's not the important number. The second number, the damage reduction, is the reason why versatility is your number 1 stat. Because it's raw damage reduction. There is no adjustment to magic, it is just overall pure damage reduction. In addition, every single point of versatility increases your Celestial Brew bubble by that amount. 1 versatility is 1 extra absorb. Now, mastery does more than dodge, but in discussions it seems to be what everyone focuses on. It also increases your attack power. And attack power bonuses also increase the potency of Celestial Brew, Expel Harm, and the talent Eye of the Tiger. It does not just do power of your attacks, so it also includes being a defensive. Now, 35 mastery is equal to 1% mastery. So 1% mastery scales depending on how much agility you have. If you have 1500 attack power, 35 mastery is an additional 15 attack power. 15 times 6 is 90 Celestial Brew absorb. Whereas 35 versatility will be 35 Celestial Brew absorb. Now let's say we moved it up to 1700. 1700 attack power, 35 mastery is now 17 attack power. 17 times 6 is 102 Celestial Brew absorb, and your versatility is still 35 verse for 35 absorb. Plus, since I chose Kyrian, since mastery is already getting increased, it'd be better to potently increase mastery, because that Kyrian ability increases it by 10% no matter what my mastery currently is. You have a chance equal to your critical strike chance to be healed for an additional 65% of the amount healed. So this is all sources, it's not just your own healing. Alright, this is what Wowhead says about Critical Strike. Thanks to Celestial Fortune, Critical Strike directly increases your healing taken and is an integral to surviving with Brewmaster's limited self-healing toolkit. It's also an excellent offensive stat. Outstanding stuff. This is the line I want to focus on right here. As is integral to surviving with Brewmaster's limited self-healing toolkit. Let's focus on where it says Brewmaster's limited self-healing toolkit. Why would I greatly increase something that's already limited? What this is saying is increase your healer's healing to you. I don't like having to be reliant on other people. That even includes my healer. Critical Strike also does not offer any form of damage avoidance, so you will still get hit for the full amount and hope to get healed back from it. Strike is important, but remember, I do Mythic Pluses. I pug a lot. I don't always have the best healer. So I'm not going to increase something that's already weak within my own class. With Mastery, I am increasing my own toolkit. I am increasing the potency of Celestial Brew. I am increasing the potency of Expel Harm. I'm increasing Nizau's damage. I'm increasing all of my own stuff so I can be self-reliant just in case I don't have a reliable healer. Haste reduces the cooldown of your Purifying Brew, and it reduces the cooldown of your Keg Smash. Even though we have the legendary that gives double Keg Smashes, you still want to get as many Keg Smashes out as you can. So Haste sounds really important, right? Well, it is. You want to get 14% Haste or higher. Well, here's the thing. You don't want to prioritize Haste at all. My gear has so little Haste, I'm only at 4.88%. Well, I know what you're thinking. That's 10% less than what I just said. But remember our talents. We're using High Tolerance. And with High Tolerance, depending on your level of Stagger, it increases your Haste by up to 15%. If I have 1% Stagger, my Haste goes up by 8.36%. 31% Stagger, it goes up by 12.54%, and 61% Stagger or higher, I will have 15% Haste. Now, I am over my cap that I am required. Now, loot kinda got us hurt. Unless you PvP, there are only 5 slots of gear with Versatility Mastery, 8 if you raid. And 2 of those are weapons off of Denathrius, so unless you're a Mythic Raider, you're not going to get anything higher than a 220 Versatility Mastery weapon, unless you PvP. So excluding trinkets, that is less than half of your gear can be your best in slot pieces. Which is the reason why I made my gloves be the legendary. Even though shoulders will have more potent stats, there are no Versatility Mastery gloves, so I went ahead and did my legendary with the gloves. So 7 of the other 8 slots, I made sure that I had versatility in every single slot. The last one is the neck. My neck is the only piece of gear that does not have versatility in it because I have to make up for the lack of mastery. As for trinkets, the undisputed best trinket is the Blood Splattered Scale. It is an absolute must-have. At a 220 item level, in my current stats, I am able to absorb 64,868 damage when there are 5 enemies around me. To put that in perspective, unbuffed, my health is 54,560. For your second trinket, if you raid, you want to try to get the Splintered Heart of Alar. That is a very popular second trinket. If you're only going to do Mythic Pluses and nothing else, your choices are either a double on use trinket or a passive DPS trinket. So in that case, just pick your poison. I pop Rushing Jade Wind before I even get to the pull. On larger packs or on bosses, if it's available, I'll pop Celestial Brew right after. Then I walk up to the enemies and Keg Smash right away. Then I pop Weapons of Order. Then I Keg Smash again. Set them on fire, and I keg smash again. On larger packs, I pop Nizao during Weapons of Order. Kick them in the face, slap them a few times, do it again. Use Purify if your Stagger turns red. After using Purifying Brew, use Celestial Brew. It'll maximize its Absorb. Use Expel Harm on cooldown, as well as Keg Smash and Blackout Kick. Slap when you can to get your Celestial Brew off cooldown, and Spinning Crane Kick as a filler to get Nizao off cooldown. If you chose Night Fae, you're going to want to use Phalanx Stomp as an initial pull, and then every time it's up, do your best to tank in the Phalanx Stomp so you have a chance of getting it to reset. If you chose Necrolord, use Fleshcraft as a defensive cooldown as often as you can, and use Bone Dust Brew just after Celestial Brew so that way you can have maximum uptime. And if you chose Venthyr, use Fallen Order as a damaging defensive, just like you would do Nizao. And that's it. That's how you Brewmaster. I do offer private coaching on Patreon for anybody who wants it. You can see the link in the comments down below. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.